Hi and welcome. My name is Allie Stern. I am a mom of 2 boys and I'm a grant writer for the Jewish Agency for Israel. I am thrilled that so many of you have joined us for this evening's webinar. There are 23 participants on the call, and I want to thank the Jewish Federation of Cleveland for providing us with this opportunity. Webinars like this have been a tremendous resource for so many of us as we learn how to live through the pandemic. I also want to recognize Jewish Federation of Cleveland Board Chair David Heller and Erica Rudin-Loria, President of the Jewish Federation of Cleveland, for their leadership during these unprecedented times. One of the core strengths of our Cleveland Jewish community is its commitment for caring and providing for others. During the past few months, your Jewish Federation, agencies, schools, and other community partners have demonstrated strength and resilience as they have worked together to face the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on Jewish Cleveland. It is because of the strength of the Campaign for Jewish Needs and thousands of generous donors that the Jewish Federation has collectively been able to respond to the many ongoing needs of our Cleveland community. We hope you can join us to kick off the annual campaign for our first ever drive-through campaign opening on Thursday, August 27th from 5 to 8 p.m. Come join our community coming together and enjoy some exciting surprises. Please register your car for a half-hour time slot. We hope you will continue to support the Campaign for Jewish Needs and our thriving Jewish community, both here in Cleveland, in Israel, and abroad. And we want you to know that the Jewish Federation is here for you and your friends and family. If you are struggling or know someone who is struggling during this challenging time, please contact Access Jewish Cleveland at 216-292-INFO-4636 or accessjewishcleveland.org. It's safe to say that due to COVID-19, we are living and raising our children in one of the most uncertain times in modern history. When planning for this webinar, our goal was to help parents navigate the next phase of the pandemic, which is the start of the school year. The local experts we have gathered are here to provide practical tips you can use to make this transition. As you came into tonight's event, we had 2 polls up on the screen. I want to review the results of the polls so we know who is in the room with us this evening. So we have 44% of you have children who are elementary school age, 39% middle school, and 17% high school. For as of now, what kind of school your children be partaking in this fall, 50% of you will be sending your child in-person schooling through a public or private school. 22% are going to be doing virtual school through a public or private school. 22%, a combination of in-person and virtual school through a public or private school. And 6% are going to homeschool with a parent leading. Tonight, we have the privilege of speaking with 3 experts in communal services, child psychology, and parent education. Before I introduce them, I want to mention that while we gathered questions from many of you during registration, and thank you for those, we also want to encourage you to ask questions throughout tonight's session. Please submit a question by typing it into the Q&A box. If you don't know where that is, if you move your cursor on your screen at the bottom, I'm pointing to it on my screen, there's a little Q&A icon that pops up. You can select that and then you can type in your question. We encourage you to ask questions to the entire panel or address to a specific panelist with your question. If possible, please include the ages of your children so that the questions can be answered appropriately. We also encourage participation in the chat box throughout the evening, so please feel empowered to join us. I want to introduce our panelists. I'm sorry, and the chat is also, if you move your cursor at the bottom, there's chat with the little bubble, so you can find it there. So I want to introduce our panelists this evening. First, we have Joan Morgenstern. Joan is an early childhood educator with more than 30 years of professional experience. In Joan's current role as Director of Parent Education and Community Engagement for Senders Pediatrics, Joan offers one-on-one parent coaching sessions, parent education classes, and professional training for educators, and is passionate about helping parents gain footing and build confidence as they nurture and guide their children. Jill Sadowsky is the Director of Jewish Community Services at Bellefaire JCB. This includes overseeing the Jewish Big Brothers, Big Sisters mentoring program, as well as overseeing all Bellefaire school counselors who practice in our Jewish day schools. David Steinweg, Ph.D., is a licensed psychologist specializing in children, adolescents, and families. In addition to his private practice, Dr. Steinweg is the consulting psychologist with the Ratner School in Pepper Pike, the Mandel Jewish Day School in Beechwood, Andrews Osborne Academy in Willoughby, and Bellefaire JCB in Shaker Heights. Thanks to all three of you for taking the time to be with us tonight. To kick us off, I'm going to ask a question to all three panelists, and you can let me know what your thoughts are on this. As we're thinking about how to get through the next few months, can you share your perspective on proactive ways parents can manage the stress of going back to school? What is one consideration or piece of advice you think we should keep in mind as we manage the next few weeks?
I think it's helpful for parents in particular to take the long view, that this is the pandemic and our response is going to take a long time to resolve, whether it's another 3 months, 6 months, or a year. So when we are living day to day and moment to moment, a lot of the challenges that come up feel extremely urgent and dire. And when our kids are with us, if they see that, that raises their expectation or experience that things are really urgent. And that's a hard sort of intensity to maintain for parents, first of all, but for kids as well, to sort of be on as if every moment the stakes are so high. So I think it's really helpful to just keep in mind that this is going to take a while, and so the good things that happen are wonderful, but the challenges, and particularly the mistakes that we make, most of them after a day or two or three will have passed away. And the more we can sort of be patient with ourselves and compassionate with our loved ones and our kids, so that when things don't happen as we wish they would, or genuine mistakes happen, the stakes don't feel so high. And so that it's going to just increase how well families are getting along and keep worries and anxiety lower. With the tortoise and the hare story, I often use with younger families, and we definitely want to be the tortoise in our response, because we need to keep up our energy level and stamina for the long run. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Joan, if you'd like to.
Sure. Thanks so much, Allie. So I think it's often helpful if we can think in terms of framing a healthy mindset. And as you note, I didn't say a positive mindset and I didn't say a negative mindset. I mean, positive mindset, that may just be too big of a task to do at this time. And negative, no one wants to be a Debbie Downer, and we know that that gets a terribly bad rap. But what does it really mean to sustain a healthy mindset? And there are many ways to do that, and I'm going to share with you 4 that I think can really be helpful to parents. The first is that we all need to be courageous. We are in uncertain times, and uncertainty requires us to be brave. And so we want to access our courage so that we can befriend the unknown as opposed to simply fearing the unknown. The second one is compassionate. We need to be compassionate with ourselves first. It comes from a place of strong integrity. When we have compassion for ourselves, for the imperfections that we know we will meet along the way, then we can extend that compassion to our children, to their teachers, to the principals, to the superintendents, to everybody who's making challenging decisions at this really unfamiliar time. And what I want people to note is we've always lived with imperfection. The difference is that our imperfections were familiar and comfortable to us. So we need to be compassionate with ourselves and others as we brace unfamiliar imperfections The next is that I want to say is that we need to be conscientious. And by conscientious, it's really being deliberate and thoughtful about where we put our energy. We often really drain ourselves by putting our energy into things we have no power to change or control. So we want to harness where our power is, focus it on the things that we can execute control over, and make decisions and use our power and force effectively versus just draining our batteries. And the last, and it's very similar to what David said, is that we want to be curious. And by curious, that allows us to approach this with less judgment involved in it, but more from a place of what might we learn, what might unfold that might not be as bad as we're anticipating. How might we look on this 2 years from now as we describe it both to ourselves or to our children?
Thank you. Jill, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I think what I have to say really pulls together and piggybacks on both what Joan and David shared. So first of all, I think we all need to realize there's no definitive right or wrong for what each parent and what each family is choosing to do. Everybody has their reasons, and it was really hard decisions for those families that are at a school that had options. And so I think we need to realize this isn't a black and white. There isn't a definite right or wrong. And we have to also be respectful and teach our kids that of everybody makes different decisions and how we came to ours. I think the other piece that really stands out for me is for those of us that are planners and like to have everything in place for the whole school year or the whole semester, we need to step back and say, first of all, things are changing almost every day. Look at really small components. If we want to try to have a plan for the first 3 days of school, we're starting on Wednesday, but there's no need, and it can really just cause more anxiety and stress of thinking, I have to plan out everything for the next semester. How's it going to work? Because we've also seen things are changing so rapidly. And then I think the last thing that I'm sure we're going to talk about, and Joan used the term too, everybody talks about self-care. So first of all, kudos to those of you that are calling in and joining tonight. Truly, you took a minute for yourself. You set some time aside. 1, it's a great diversion. 2, maybe you're going to learn some new tricks. But 3, I hope you're also going to get some pats on the back, realizing that you're doing lots of things right. But I think when we talk about that self-care, it's making really good decisions. If it's sleep, if it's food, if it's activity, but doing things to truly benefit ourselves, and same things for our kids. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, thank you for those sort of little bite-sized pieces of advice. We're going to turn it now to some of the questions that we received both during registration, and also I am seeing the questions that are coming in that people are submitting. So please continue to do so. We want to make this valuable for the people who are attending this evening. So I'm going to start with the first question that were received by someone when they registered for this panel, for this webinar. So for those of us with children returning to school in person, do you have any advice to promote their confidence when they've been by our side for so long over these last few months? Yeah, Jill, please.
Sure. That's a great question. And I think we've actually heard it quite a lot. A lot of those memories and reminding our kids how well they did do and where they had been at. For some families, it may mean trying little steps and, you know, you're heading out the door on your own for a little, but reminding them and getting them to realize and remember, you did this. We've done it before, you're gonna do it again. And then just continually encouraging them, as well as showing confidence that even though deep down as parents we're worried too, that you know they can do this. And of course, that they're going to a good, safe place that has everything in place to help them.
Great.
I would add that a lot of times rehearsal helps. So if the kid, whatever the activity is going to be, but particularly school, because that's such a huge event and experience, if a child or a teen is feeling anxious about it, to get them approximating what going to school might be like. So it could be getting together with a couple other children and do it in a physically distant, safe way, but they could be in a park. They could do something outside, just so that that initial day, not everything is brand new, because that can be overloading. Depending on the school, it might be helpful to walk there with them or drive there with them, so that there'll be enough going on day one that just the experience of, oh, look at the building, or look at that, all that is not quite as new, and they can focus more on things that can't be rehearsed or done ahead of time.
Absolutely. Joan, it looked like before you said you wanted to contribute.
I was going to say, well, David started it. I think practicing with children beforehand. Certainly we know that children returning to school, they're likely going to all be wearing masks. So we want to acclimate them so that they're a little bit more familiar with what that's going to feel like before they do it in the context of school. The other is that any kind of conflicted feelings that kids have are totally normal and natural. And our goal is to honor and embrace those feelings. So while we always want to be encouraging to them and let them know that, yes, we know it might feel different and you have everything you need in order to be successful, we also want to give them space and permission to be able to emote what those feelings are. So one of my favorite things that I share with parents is when a kid might say, I'm really worried about going back to school. A natural inclination may be to want to say to a child, you have nothing to worry about, you're going to be fine. And instead I say, just substitute that with the words, that's interesting. Tell me more about it. So we hold space and allow children to really emote and have permission that we can feel comfortable hearing some of their uncomfortable feelings. Reassuring them is a perfect way to end.
I love that idea of sort of rolling out the red carpet for their feelings, just to sort of say, you know, you've got something going on with you and I'm here to listen, and giving them the space to process that. I think that's wonderful.
If I can add to what Joan said, I think that idea of holding space is so important, and it builds on itself, because if we are curious about what our kids are telling us, and when they're feeling overwhelmed or showing some emotions or a side of them that might be a side that they're wondering, are mom and dad gonna like that? Will they still accept me if I'm afraid, or if I'm don't want to do something that they value? And if we can allow those feelings, and I think as Joan said, to tell me more, show interest, that's communicating that we accept you, we love you as you are, you don't have to be more, and it builds trust. And then our son or daughter is dealing with the issue not alone, but with us in their corner, rather than feeling like, oh, it's okay, because mom said it is, or dad said, but what if I don't feel it's okay? Then they're having to deal with it a little bit more on their own, which can make it more challenging.
I like that we're talking about helping children process their emotions. The next question that we received by someone registering for the event kind of goes into that in a little bit more detail. Maybe we can provide some more nuance to give this parent some guidance. This parent writes, my kids are so excited to go back to school in person, but I'm worried about their disappointment and sadness when they realize that school as we know it is not going to be what it was before. They know the facts, but won't really understand it until they see it. Do you have suggestions on how to manage their expectations and their emotions?
So I'll start a little bit. So I think that that's likely that children will go back. There's that earnestness about wanting to get back. It's the information about, yes, I hear things will be different, but do I understand what those differences will feel like? And as much as we can do quite a bit to prepare them, it's a little bit, I liken it to teaching a child to swim. There's only so much you can teach them about swimming in a pool before they actually get in and get wet. So we do need to do our due diligence and prepare children, and yet we understand that their experience may feel very different once they're actually there. And the best thing that I can encourage parents to do is to hold space for mixed feelings. So the idea of feeling pleased to be returning and not necessarily liking all of the conditions in which children are returning. And more often than not, it's really adults have to help children make sense of their feelings rather than, we can't fix other people's feelings. So it's really about clarifying for them. And if they're in a lot of emotional angst or confusion, what they don't have, and especially by their age as well, as they don't have the voice of reason. So we don't have to come in and save them or fix it. We need to be the voice of reason to help them understand where those conflicts come from.
Wonderful.
It can be very
Jill.
hard to tolerate. I'm sorry, Jill, did you want to go?
It's fine.
It can be very hard to tolerate our kids' disappointment, frustration, anxiety. And sometimes those feelings, they come by very honestly because school will be different and in a substantive way, and it is going to be disappointing. Being able to listen to what the disappointment is about, and sometimes asking them, tell me more about that, so that when they're finished explaining it, we can say, you know, that makes sense. I can see why you're feeling as you are, can be unburdening. It doesn't fix it because it's not fixable. But I think the path through this, what we're going through with the pandemic, is kids will learn how to tolerate and live with the uncertainty, the disappointment that the pandemic is throwing at them. And it's developmental and it's gradual. So with each disappointment that they're unsure about, they check in with mom and dad or trusted loved ones and have space to figure it out for themselves with our support. With each event, they'll become more mature and more able to handle it in a more sufficient way.
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to add one component that David really took it to that point, is just that we all as parents have to prepare ourselves too to hear that it wasn't great and be able to manage that. I think, you know, the typical pickup question is, how was it? And usually it's, was it a great day? So just to know that, and that's okay, but also expect it. And then obviously everything that was shared by Joan and David for the other components.
So I want to shift the focus just a little bit now. We've talked a little bit about how to manage our children's expectations, how to be there for them when they're kind of mourning the experiences that they won't be getting, or to prepare them for changes and differences. We've gotten a couple questions about just sort of being confident in parenting decisions and also how to relate to our children during these uncertain times. So one question that we received is from a parent of a high school student. And it says, my 17-year-old is a senior and he wants to continue doing classes virtually. Do I let him stay home? He's been isolated from friends for so long. I think he needs to go back for socialization. He suffers from depression and anxiety, and COVID has not helped things. What should I do? So I guess for this one, both for this particular parent and also to sort of zoom out a little bit, how do we as parents navigate it when our child might prefer one method of learning And we as parents want to pursue a different one. I know that obviously changes based on the age of the child, but how do we make these decisions confidently and hold that space with our children?
I have a couple thoughts. One is sort of a more general response that with high schoolers who have the option of in-person or virtual learning, they're at an age where I think their point of view is to be taken seriously. And we want to, even if it's not their decision entirely, they certainly, I would suggest, have a seat at the table. So I would want to listen and find out what is it that makes you want to stay virtual. What are the pros and cons? What makes that better? What makes going to school in person more challenging or fearful? And are those reasons that are significant, or are they, you know, it could range from fear of bullying to not wanting to preferring home lunch. It's just really hard to know what the specifics are. And I think having that conversation and dialogue is going to kind of help. I always think that if we want our kids to, or anybody, but particularly our kids, to listen to us, we want to, it's going to go better if we listen to them first, to model that behavior. Because if they feel heard, then they're going to be more inclined to take what we have to say to heart. But with the specifics of the question, I would tweak it a bit, because the question said that I forget if it was a son or daughter, was experiencing depression or anxiety. I just don't know how serious that is. Sometimes it's used very broadly. But if it's something that's serious to the point where it's a clinical matter where they might be talking to a counselor, then I would certainly, that would be a major focus of the counseling session, to understand, is going to school, are there things that are going to exacerbate the depression or the anxiety? Or, you know, sometimes anxiety is best treated with exposure, with support, where you gradually habituate to the thing that is scaring you. And those are the details that really matter in that question that are hard to say for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. With that, in terms of staying with this sort of general theme of parenting, someone posted in our chat box, it says, "It seems like enforcing discipline is even harder now, with no real routine from my daughter as I work from home full time. Any suggestions about how to reframe this and look at how to handle it through this new situation?"
What's the age of the child?
It does not say in this particular question. So I guess I get like the vibe that this might be kind of like middle school, but you know, I could be wrong.
Right.
Because when you're questioning, high school.
High school. So
thank you out there for clarifying. Okay.
Right. So that, I mean, I was just going to say a few things. I think the start of school is an opportunity to do a bit of a reset. When we're talking about high school students, as David mentioned, we're bringing them to the table. The best way to really define limits and or boundaries, or both, is really through collaboration. I mean, I say most people don't like to be told what to do, including 2-year-olds, and certainly not high school students. So the idea, while parents ultimately set and define limits, that high school students who are brought into the conversation about saying, wow, we need to figure out a strategy so it works for both of us. I'm interested in hearing your ideas, and not really just hearing them. I probably should insert the word listening, because we often hear but fail to listen. So it's really anything you might have to say, any idea you have is worthy of consideration. Again, the ultimate decision-making falls in the lap of the parent, but I think certainly with our high school students, we really need to give them a voice, we need to give them a presence, and we need to listen to understand so we can hear where their needs are coming from.
Yeah, Jill.
Ellie, I think I would also just add part of that reset that Joan mentioned is also going back to, let's put together our daily schedule, whose workspaces are where, and really defining it. Because I think many people over the summer, it really was just whatever. Stay up late on video games, sleep late. So part of that back to school reset, even if it is in your home, is the structure, the schedule, and then adding all those components regarding the rules, the expectations. It's just a great time to redefine everything.
Great. In terms of setting expectations and getting students ready for school, one of the questions that we've been hearing about is socialization with our kids. We've heard for a long time that parents need to limit their children's screen time, and that too much exposure to social media can have negative consequences for children's social, emotional health and behavior. However, and this is especially relevant for children who are going to be staying home and doing virtual classes, we've pivoted to introducing so much screen time into our kids' lives between Zoom classes and texting and virtual hangouts. How can parents foster pro-social behavior among their children when some of them have left our screens?
I'm happy to take that one. I think
Yeah,
a few
Joan.
things. That one is, I think we want to look at pro-social behavior, and we want to look at other healthy behaviors too. So screen time in conjunction with creative expression, whether that be artistic or musical or any type of artistic, as well as physical expression. So we make sure that they're exercising and invigorating all parts of their brain. The other is when we have limited social contact, and I think that that's been a problem across the ages. And if for those students that will remain at home and not be in a formal social kind of setting, that the best way to support that is projects in service of others. And that addresses two. One is it allows the person to step outside themselves. The second is that sometimes it's a catalyst for creating deeper meaning and purpose, which are very compelling and keep kids in really their higher brain state functioning. So what might that look like? And again, it would need to be congruent with the child's interest and kind of what their innate kind of talents or desires are. But kids who like to bake for other people, kids who like to draw and create, to do cards or notes for the elderly, kids who are doing virtual school but are part of a virtual classroom, to create things that they can send in the mail to their classmates as a way of sustaining some kind of meaningful connection. Again, the goal is not just a connection, but rather a meaningful connection that can help children feel purposeful and support a sense of well-being for others.
We'll do David and then Jill. Yeah.
He'll catch it.
I think that all screen time is not alike, and that makes a difference. There's screen time watching videos, there's screen time playing games, and there's screen time like we're doing now, Zooming or FaceTiming. So I would distinguish with kids of whatever age what is being done on the screen. And particularly for kids who are learning virtually and don't have opportunity to connect with other kids or age mates, if they are wanting to do that on their computer after school to communicate, to be in relation with others, I think that's healthy. I don't know that I would limit that. And even if they are in person, to me, that in general is a positive activity. The gaming and watching the videos on TikTok, that can be a challenge. So, part of parental role is limit setting. And depending on the platform you have, whether it's an Android or an iPhone or Google, you can get in there to limit when kids are going to watch it and how much time. My general experience is to say you have 3 hours in a day doesn't go over well because they're up at 8, they've used it up all by 11, and by 11:30 they want more time. But so giving an hour for the morning, an hour afternoon, just taking on more of the role of rationing out time can help. And so it's a balance. I think it does make sense, as we have all been saying, to rather than just tell our son or daughter how it's going to be, to listen, let them make their case, and to be flexible so that they feel heard and part of the conversation. That will leave them much more likely to accept the limits that we ultimately do place with equanimity rather than with resentment, if they feel heard and part of the conversation.
Joe, you wanted to add something.
I was really just going to add on top of some of what David had shared is one of the positives I think we've seen for kids and for adults over the summer with COVID is families giving up screen time and seeing postings or hearing stories of family activities that it feels like maybe we didn't see as much, that people, parents as well, are the younger kids to the, the teens, the kids who are home from college, that it's people are going to the metro parks, to the lake, to a lot more of planned family activities without screens. And I think I keep trying to find those little positives through everything we're going. And, we've had kids home that typically may not have been home, but some of these activities, it's also pulled the parents away from the screens. So, when it's exciting and something different, and then you're also making those family memories.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to, again, sort of shift the focus to address some of the other questions that have been coming in. And this is to sort of address, we've talked about anxiety and uncertainty among our children, but this question that came in is mainly directed toward how we as parents can address our own anxiety and uncertainty. This person says, our private school is going back in person and not offering a virtual option. I'm scared that we will get sick. I'm planning to stop seeing grandparents once school starts. My kids are fine with going back to school with masks. We've practiced and they are prepared. I am reconsidering the decision to send them daily. Any advice for me as a parent in just making the decision to send them to school? Yeah, David.
It's, as Jill said earlier, there's not a right or wrong. And not knowing the age and health of the grandparents or the listeners' parents, if they are in any way medically fragile, it is a very significant decision. And even if they're healthy, but at an age where they're more vulnerable. But I think the thing to try to be aware of and pay attention to is, would the decision to limit your kids' attendance at school, how much of that is coming from anxiety and fear of what could happen versus more of a reality base? And because if your child is game to go, they're not going to have the view of what could happen to my grandparents and what are the potential repercussions. But the fact that they're interested and excited to be at school, that's wind in the sails that we want to harness if at all possible. So I would encourage you to check in with, if you're, certainly with a medical professional, if you're concerned about your parents getting sick. And the decision that you come to is one that it's not right or wrong. But I would, if you decide that you're going to limit your kids' attendance, to have them as part of that conversation. And even if they're very young, if they're upset about it, to listen, to validate. If they say, you know, you're not being fair, you're not listening, to hear them out and say, I can see how you feel that way, and I understand you're really upset at me. I would not necessarily defend the decision a lot, at least not in that initial moment, because that elevates your son or daughter and they're going to poke at you a lot. And I think what we want to do is keep the focus on their experience, their disappointment, or whatever they're going through. So those are some thoughts.
Great, thank you. With sort of the not knowing if you're making the right decision to send or to not send, I want to talk a little bit about just sort of being okay or making space for knowing that our families might be making decisions that other families are choosing to do to take a different approach. We've already seen that a lot of families are interpreting social distancing differently, with some families choosing to stay in as much as possible, with others venturing out and socializing more. With children and teens and adults posting so much of their lives on social media, it's really easy to see what everyone else is doing. How do we support our children when they see some of their peers engaging in behaviors that we're not permitting at this time? What language can we use with our children so it doesn't seem like we're casting judgment on other families who are doing things differently?
So I'll take that. I think, and I just really going to piggyback on what David said for the last, is that we really have to hear them out and hold space for what it is that they're trying to communicate, and to understand from their perspective that if peers have different types of latitude than they have, that they're likely going to experience it as not being fair, not being comfortable, or in their favor. And so doesn't mean parents need to change their decisions. It means that there is an acceptance that this is how the child is feeling, and it's based on the child's perception of what's fair and what's not fair, which is fair just in and of itself. So I think, again, it's validating that. It's not getting super defensive. It's about saying, I hear that, and that makes sense to me. And if I were your age, I would likely feel exactly the way that you do too. And the more we can just stay present to how our children are feeling, the less we feel that we have to convince them that we've made a decision that is in their best interest or the best interest of our family. So we accept that at their stage of development, it would be unlikely that they might consider the decision their family is making as being the decision that's the best one.
Yeah, Jill.
This might be one of the hardest questions we've actually had tonight, because I know we also have some kids who are great negotiators, and they push. And I think many of the adults, many of the parents, we're not sure, as we've heard. There isn't a guide to this. So it's being able to share that, let your kids realize how hard it was to make the decision and what you will put into making that decision. But I mean, I'll bet everyone on is dealing with this struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's very much different from other types of wants or asks that kids will present, like, can I have a phone? My friend has a phone. There is going to be a no or a conversation about it. And we are going to disappoint our kids because it's not always going to go their way. And the more we can hear them out and let them be mad at us, and, even though in our own mind we're clear this is the right decision for our values and our reasons, they don't have to see it that way, and to allow that separation, that they might slam the door and not talk to us for a chunk of time. The important thing is that they know we're ready with open arms when they want to talk about it. They can be mad at us and they don't lose us. That can really build a lot of trust so that they can come to us when they need us.
Mm-hmm. Great. We have another question about relationship building right now or during this time. So this parent asks, how do I help my children, and the ages span from kindergarten to sixth grade, feel like they are supported by their teacher if they've never met their teacher in person? And then the follow-up question is, how do I nurture the student-teacher relationship while not interfering as the parent and managing the work at home?
Well, I'll take a stab at this. I think that we are hoping, and we know that teachers are going to do their very best to create connection, because we know that connection creates willingness and supports learning. And yet we also recognize that they're going to come at it from different approaches. Some may be more successful than others. And the family that's asking the question, because they'll have a handful of different teachers, it will be approached differently, of which you can't really control how the teacher actually is going to try and support and sustain a meaningful connection. But you can encourage kids to do their part, of which teachers likely will not ask, which is, what are the kinds of things you would like your teacher to know about you? Why don't we send a teacher a letter or a card and inform them about those things? So we harness the power where we have the power, which is only with ourselves. So how do we take more demonstrative efforts to build a relationship, even if some of that initiation comes from the child or the family? Always being respectful as well that teachers are stressed at the start of the school year, and probably this year more than in years past, and that we want that all families are hoping for the same thing that this family is having, but it might truly help to kind of at least put the child in an active role, and as well kind of give the teacher information that could be helpful.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. Teachers are going to be, I think, more responsive and more open to getting a communication from their student. They'll be very likely to respond. And for the parent to try to, it really depends how does the relationship unfold. But for the parent to try to manage that, I think the effort might pay more dividends if the parent supports the child to make that contact in whatever way the child's comfortable, and develop their ability to talk to an authority figure, to initiate communication and develop confidence and have a direct relationship rather than one that the parent is the intermediary.
Great advice. We have another question about organization. So many families are caught in an overwhelming balancing act. Some children are going to be starting school virtually, while some of their siblings may be going to school in person. Some parents are working from home full time, while their partners or spouses are going back into the office. How can busy parents keep it all together and stay organized while juggling so many different schedules?
Go ahead, Joe.
I want to jump back to my my initial component of truly self-care and thinking of putting yourself into the equation, which a lot of really busy parents don't. I think continually looking for that balance as the stress is going up. What are things people can be doing to balance it out, to lessen it? Probably before COVID, the majority of people never got their groceries delivered or did Instacart. Maybe it was just me, but it's a balance. Where are those things you can pick and choose to help that juggle? And I think it's really looking at that and finding some things to help the balance. and truly, as you know, the ways to take care of yourself. If it's a walk with friends, if it's the kids to the park while someone else is there, but you have to keep, you know, as the airlines always tell us, you have to put your own face mask on, your oxygen, sorry, on.
It's relevant here too.
So you can take care of everyone else. But I think just look for those ways to help alleviate it.
I was just going to add something on a totally pragmatic level. It is great to start, if people aren't doing it yet, to institute family meetings. Family meetings is just a brief time, whether it occurs on a daily or weekly basis, where you just all gather and go through, this is what's going on this week. So everybody hears and is on the same page. And if you really take the concept, you can include other meaningful things to talk and discuss. But just as a way of convening a meeting, just to review the schedule, so some of the logistical issues are accurately addressed and alleviate unnecessary stress.
And I would add to the question that certainly the points that were made, but also the question was, how do I relieve the chaos? And I think to a certain extent, there's no getting away from it. There is just so much uncertainty with ever-changing landscape. Just when you think you got a system down, everything changes. So as Joan said earlier, befriending the chaos. And it's easy for me to say, and if you ask my family, I'm a guy who likes things organized, and that's the source of a lot of friction. But it's, if I react to chaos in the current environment the way I did a year or two ago, it would not work, because there's just too much uncertainty, too much emotion, and it's forced me to change and tolerate what in the past I didn't have to, and didn't think I would be able to. So with different schedules for so many kids, that just sounds like a system that, or an environment that you need a system, but the system is going to be very imperfect because of moving parts. And when things go wrong, which they will, to take it as one day at a time, that here's, we've got to recalibrate. And you might even, before school starts, anticipate it. Say, things are going to happen. It's going to go sideways, and here's how we need to address it. Here's what will be helpful. If I start raising my voice or getting panicky, you can let me know, because that'll be a sign that I need a couple deep breaths or a break and come back to figure things out.
So I'm going to ask my own little question in here, because I'm the moderator and I can do that. So we were talking about chaos, and I've seen on Pinterest and social media these like glamorous homeschool environments that people are creating for their children, where everyone has their own corner and it's all very nice. For those of us who don't have large homes to make special dedicated space for everyone to do their work and to have their own place to retreat, how do we create sort of sacred spaces where this is especially for children who are going to be learning remotely? You know, this is where you're going to be doing your schoolwork. This is where I'm going to be doing my work. This is where your siblings are going to be doing their work, when you're in a physical environment where you're just on top of each other. Also, if anyone wants to build an office in my backyard, please let me know. I will start a GoFundMe as soon as this is over, because I'm in a hot attic right now.
So I would look at it a little bit, often for families that eat dinner together around the dinner table, that it's very typical that everybody goes to the same chair every evening for dinner. It's kind of, without there being a written rule, it's like, no, that's my chair, even though all the chairs look the same. And I think it's that same kind of habit, regardless of your space, that you ideally want to develop within your house. So how do you do it? It's not like, yeah, that makes sense, but like, how do you do it? Of course, that's the art of kind of defining the space, but really doing it in collaboration. I think it's the adults that kind of say, wow, this can be your space. How do we make it so it feels comfortable for you? What do you need so you can be successful while you're working in there? And then it becomes the habit. The more you use it, the more attached and comfortable you get in that physical space. The more you experience your work in that space or whatever, the more it becomes, quote unquote, your metaphorical chair that you sit at every day. So it's really kind of setting the stage for it and then creating the habit around it with clarity. And I think possibly the harder part is the boundaries about it. That's my space. I like my space when I want to be in that space. It's just when I don't want to be in that space, I'd like to be in your space or somebody else's space. And that becomes it. So how is it that we practice what will happen if you leave your space and encroach on other space when everyone's trying to get their work done? So kids need to practice that when there isn't stress in the environment. Stress in the environment is when you're on an important call and your child encroaches on your space. So you kind of do dress rehearsals. That's why they have dress rehearsals for wedding. It's, wow, while everyone's calm and relaxed, we're going to run through what this should look like. And in our families, we need to have these dress rehearsals. And if they're not onboarding the skill really quickly, we do more rehearsing so that they begin to get a little more comfortable with what the expectation is.
Great. I think we're going to just conclude with that, but I don't want anyone who's attending the panel to leave because we do have a little bit more. But I do want to thank so much Joan, Jill, and David. I know this has been so helpful to me, and I hope to many of the participants as well. We really appreciate your sharing your evening with us and giving us practical tips to manage stress as well as prepare to go back to school. Before we end our time together, I would like for each of you who are attending the webinar to share in the chat box what your one takeaway is from this call. Mine, aside from getting some tips on the sacred space and how to reinforce that, is really just a reminder to hold space for my children's feelings during this time. And I know when I come to my husband complaining about my day, the last thing I want him to say is, but it's okay, things are okay, tomorrow will be better. To just listen. And I think that if that's how we treat adults, that's also how we should extend the same courtesy to our children, to just be a sounding board to absorb their feelings and help them process without going into our instinct to try to fix everything. Because right now we're experiencing a time where we can't fix everything. And we just all have to kind of be okay with that and be comfortable with being a little uncomfortable.
And we can always ask them, do you want help, or do you want me to listen?
Yeah.
And they'll let us know.
So we're getting some feedback. I'll just read it. I think some people can see it, but it says, Rivki says, I love the idea of family meetings. Rachel says, my family's issues are not unique. We are not alone. It's true. It's comforting to know we're all kind of in the same ocean, even though our boats might be very different. So we're all kind of going through something the same. I'll read just a little bit more of the closing notes, but if any more comments come in, we'd love to hear how people have processed this and their takeaways. But again, we just want to thank everyone for joining us. And we hope that you learned something and that you can add to your own parenting toolkit. Again, if you or your family needs assistance or help in any way, please contact Access Jewish Cleveland for confidential guidance. Please stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.